Hi group, it's Mrs. Schaus. I'm here to take a look at allocating the monthly payment with you. Now, allocating a monthly payment really means that we're trying to decide how the payment gets sort of split up. We want to be able to determine how much the payment is going to go towards the interest that we need to pay to the bank and how much goes towards reducing our principal or our loan balance. Right, each month you'll make the same payment amount. That's what an installment loan is, right? But from one month to the next, a different amount of it goes towards reducing your principal, and then the other portion goes towards interest. How is it that this is determined? We want to be able to decide how much goes towards interest and how much towards reducing our principal balance. So we're going to use these formulas. Interest is principal times rate times time. Now that is the simple interest formula, although we are paying compound interest. But from one month to the next, we can use that simple interest formula. Our payment towards principal is the monthly payment amount minus the amount that gets paid towards interest to the bank. And then finally, our new principal, or new balance as we could call it, is our previous balance from last month, or our previous principal, minus the payment that went towards principal. So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples and try to decide how we would allocate the funds. All right, in this first problem it says, well, actually the directions for both of these say to find the amount of the payment that goes towards interest and towards reducing principal. So for number one, Sally borrowed $8,000 for a used car. Her monthly payment is $241.57. She borrowed the money at an annual rate of 5.5% for 36 months. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is determine how much money goes towards interest. Well, that is the principal balance, which for the first month is the same thing as the amount that we borrowed. So I'm going to do the principal $8,000 times the rate, which needs to be expressed as a decimal. Now there's a decimal within this, but there's a percent sign. So this isn't expressed as a decimal. I want to drop the percent sign and move the decimal back 2 places to the left. So 0.055 would be the rate expressed as a decimal. And then finally, there's the time. Now, here's the hard part for folks to get, and it's really an easy fix. Folks want to put in 36 here, like 36 months. But the reality is that we're making one monthly payment. So our time for all of these problems is always going to be 1/12. Remember that I said we were using this simple interest formula and that we would repeat it over and over again, for each month. So this really determines the number of times that this is going to happen. But for this annual percentage rate, we're only going to pay 1/12 of that with each monthly payment. All right, so let's go ahead and make the calculation here. I've got my calculator beside me. I'm going to do 8,000 times 0.055 times 1/12, which I'm going to enter in. Some of you might have fraction keys, but I'm just going to enter it in as 1 divided by 12. And I get $36.67, rounding to the nearest whole cent. So that is the amount of my payment, this $241.57. This portion of it is going to go towards interest that I'm paying to the bank. So the remaining amount is going to be my payment to principal. I'm just going to abbreviate that, my payment to principal. It's going to be the entire payment amount, $241.57, take away the $36.67 that I'm giving the bank for interest. Let's see what that difference is. $204.90. Okay, now in a moment, after I look at this second example with you, we're going to take a look at what happens from one month to the next. So this is just showing what's happening for the first month. For the very first month of this total payment, this portion goes towards interest, this portion towards reducing my loan balance. Okay, the next example says, Mark borrowed $36,400 for an RV for 5 years at a rate of 7%. His monthly payments are $720.76. Also, we are asked to find his new balance after the first payment is applied. So they still want us to say how much of the payment goes towards interest and how much towards reducing principal, but then also to give the new balance after that first payment is applied. We'll begin in the same fashion that we did above with our simple interest formula. Maybe I should have written that out. I know it's written up above here, but it's principal times rate times time. And so the principal of this loan is $36,400. The rate is 7%, but again, remember it's expressed as a decimal, so times 0.07. And what is time? Every single time, 1/12, because we're only paying a 12th or a monthly portion of this annual rate. Let's let the calculator do that work for us. 36,400 times 0.07 times, I'm going to again put this fraction in as 1 divided by 12. And that gives me $212.33. That's a lot of money going towards interest, isn't it? Let's see how much is left over as a payment to principal. Remember that my total payment amount was $720.76, and $212.33 went towards interest for the bank. So it is the difference in those two. Let's see what I get here. $508.43 that will reduce my loan balance. So if I want to find my new principal, or maybe you would call that new balance, I don't care which one of those two ways that you label it, I would go back to the $36,400 that was my balance initially, or when I started the loan, and I'll subtract off the $508.43 that I'm reducing my loan balance by. That leaves me with $35,891.57 remaining as the amount that I would still owe. If I had some kind of cash, windfall money come in and I could pay off the loan sort of today, that would now be the balance at this point. Okay, I want to extend our thinking just a little bit to consider an amortization schedule. Now, amortization, let me write that up here, is a fancy word for a repayment schedule. Sometimes amortization you'll see spelled with a Z, sometimes with an S. It's kind of tomato, tomato. I don't care which way you spell it. All right, consider the following partial repayment schedule that's below, or amortization schedule that's sitting below. They want us to find the information as we did before for the amount of money that goes towards interest, the amount for principal, and our new balance for the first 3 months. Okay, so we're going to, this says find in, it probably should say fill in. Sorry about that. But we're going to find that information and then fill in the table for the first 3 months. Well, notice that below it says Doug borrowed $5,000 for 24 months at a rate of 12%. This first month worth of information is filled in for us, but where did it really come from? We need to think for month number 1, making the same calculations that we did before. That is to find the amount for interest. What they really did was the principal, $5,000, times the rate, 12% as a decimal is 0.112, or 0.12 I meant. Oops, there goes the light. Let me wave my arms and see if I can get the light to turn back on again. There it goes. Sorry about that. Okay, and then times the time, remember it's always going to be 1/12. So now, plugging that into my calculator, 5,000 times 0.12 times 1/12 gives me 50 bucks. So that's where this information came from, okay? How did they get the amount towards principal? Well, again, the payment to principal equals whatever the payment amount is, $235.37, minus the amount of that payment that went to pay off the bank. So $235.37 minus 50 for the bank's interest That gives me the $185.37 that I see listed here. And lastly, to get your new balance or new principal, they took what our balance was, the $5,000, and subtracted the $185.37, and we'll check that calculation. 5,000 minus 185.37 gives me $4,814.63, again, as we see listed up here. So that's for month one. Let's go through the same process looking at month number 2. You'll notice us run through the same steps, but I'm going to need to use some different numbers. When I calculated up here, interest was principal times rate times time, the principal balance was the same thing as the amount that was originally borrowed. Why? Because at this point, Doug hasn't paid any money towards the loan. But now here in the second month, he's reduced his balance. It's no longer $5,000. It's this new amount, $4,814.63. So that's principal times the rate didn't change, so 0.12. The time frame didn't change. We're still talking about a monthly payment, so we'll put in 1/12 of the year. And I'm going to, again, calculate this principal. I've already got that in my calculator, times the rate of 0.12 times 1/12. And I get $48.15, again, always rounding to the nearest whole cent. So that is the amount now that I would place here for interest for that second month, $48.15. And I will now calculate my payment to principal. That is, take the payment amount, $235.37, and subtract off the amount that went towards interest, $48.15. $235.37 minus $48.15 gives $187.22. $187.22. And to find my new principal or new balance, I take what my principal was from last month, or from last month. Not the original principal, but what the principal was from last month, $4,814.63 minus $187.22. And that leaves me with $4,627.41. I'm going to write that in here. And we need to repeat the process one more time for month number 3. So again, interest is principal times rate times time, but the principal is lower, $4,627.41 times the rate of 0.12 times the time of 1/12. Let's see what we get this time. That leaves me with $46.27, again rounding to the nearest whole cent. So I'll write that in here, $46.27. We need to find our payment towards principal. So take your payment amount, $235.37, subtract off $46.27, and that leaves us with $189.10. So $189.10 sits up here in the payment towards principal. And finally, to find our new principal, we'll take our principal from last month, $4,627.41, and we'll subtract away the $189.10 that's going to reduce our principal balance. That leaves me with $4,400 $38.31. And again, I'll plug that in here to finish filling in our table. Okay, we're done with those calculations for the first 3 months. Now, we will talk about other ways to create an amortization schedule using some online calculator tools rather than having to entirely create them by hand. After all, if this were for 24 months, that means we'd need to continue this process over and over again, 24 times. If it were a mortgage for 15 or 30 years, you can imagine that's, a whole lot of months to make these kind of calculations. So we don't always want to do things by hand. But it's good for us to do it by hand so that we get the process of what's really happening each month. And what you should notice about this loan, and it becomes super evident when we look at things like mortgages, is that in the beginning, the payment, when it's distributed, we're paying a larger amount for interest, and each month the amount that we pay towards interest is going down, even if it's a little bit, right? Our amount for principal is lower, I meant to say, in the beginning, and is going up over time. So I guess it's kind of good to see that pattern, and like I was saying, we'll look at some amortization schedules where we look at mortgages, and it might surprise you the portion of our payment that goes towards principal and how high that it sort of stays near the beginning and does eventually trickle down, where this payment towards principal can sometimes, in a mortgage situation, seem quite low, but does start to get higher as time goes by. Okay? So these are the calculations that you're going to make on your next assignment. And, of course, reach out to me if you have any questions. And I hope it's a great day, folks. I'll talk to you soon.